Welcome to the Michael Blum Show, where we talk about things you don't want to talk about. We talk about sex. We talk about politics. We talk spirituality and substance abuse. Join us by calling 800-699-0980. Think, speak, and be heard. Here now is Michael Blum.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Michael Blum Show. I hope everyone had a very, very good week. You're looking at something that you rarely will see. I don't know if anyone can pick it out, but I had some eye surgery done last Tuesday. I'm going to go for my post-op tomorrow, and hence the glasses. This is what I look like with glasses. Not bad, I guess. I think I handle them well. I don't look too stupid with them. Great procedure called an iridotomy. They numb your eyeball up. You sit in this thing, push your head and chin forward, and they put this big magnifying glass over your eyeball and pop a hole into your iris, or in my case, two of them. And the idea is to drain fluid out so I won't have a glaucoma attack. Who knew I was a candidate for glaucoma, but obviously I was. So that was rather exciting this week. I hope that it never happens to you and you never need to do it. Today's topic kind of brings me back to the things we don't really like to talk about, but sometimes I think we ought to. And that's going to be masturbation is going to be what we're going to be talking about mostly today. It's not going to be a politically oriented show, though I was asked to make some comments about the son of the memo and the Olympics a little bit, the portraits that came out of the Obamas today. I didn't load that onto my system here, and the budget, which is ridiculous. But I don't know if I'll get to that today. I may just go ahead and do this. We're going to have a guest later on who's rather expert in the subject, and I guess I could tell you what's going to be the show and what isn't going to be the show. This is not a workshop, so I will not be doing anything touching myself. Sorry, folks. I'm sure that you all want to see that. But that's not what it's going to be about. It's going to be about some things that you've never really heard of and some things that you might have heard of. And I think what I'm going to do is I will start with a very quick clip about masturbation. And this is about the good and the bad. And it's one doctor's opinion, or one group of people's opinion, and then we'll get Dr. Colby on the phone. We'll see what he has to say about it.
Surveys show that 95% of men and around 72% of women have masturbated in their life. But with rumors that it's unhealthy, can cause blindness, and even infertility, can masturbation be good for you? Feeling yourself isn't just for single people. 70% of men and 40% of women in relationships reported masturbating within the 4 weeks leading up to a recent survey. After all, it feels good. Not only is dopamine released, which helps control the brain's reward and pleasure centers, reducing feelings of stress, but other endorphins released during an orgasm can decrease your perception of pain. For women, polishing the pearl can reduce menstrual cramping. And of course, with the help of the hormone prolactin, which is linked to sleep, you're likely to feel exhausted and catch some much-needed Z's. Feel like you're coming down with a cold? One study found that in males, components of the immune system are activated during masturbation, increasing the number of white blood cells in the bloodstream. Solo sessions might also help men reduce cancer, with high ejaculation frequency correlating with a decreased risk of total prostate cancer. Though it's unclear why, researchers hypothesize that increased ejaculation means potential carcinogenic secretions in the prostate are excreted more regularly, decreasing their negative impact on the body. But why have humans and animals evolved to masturbate if it's seemingly a waste of energy or semen in men? Well, it turns out that self-love can actually improve the quality of sperm. A study showed that recent male masturbation reduced the number of sperm inseminated at the next copulation, but not the number retained by the female. From this, it was concluded that masturbation is a male strategy to improve the fitness of their sperm, as younger sperm have a higher likelihood of insemination. Not only that, but masturbation can improve your sexual performance. Both women and men have pelvic floor muscles that stretch from your pubic bone to your tailbone. As we age, these muscles weaken, causing sexual dysfunction in women and erectile dysfunction in men. But stroking the penis or clitoris can activate the bulbocavernosus reflex, resulting in pelvic floor muscles contracting. It's essentially a workout for your sex muscles. Nitric oxide levels also diminish with age and can contribute to a decreased sex drive, but masturbation can help maintain it in your blood throughout your life. But while masturbating does have physiological benefits, it's important to mix up your techniques. Using the same way to get off every time can make you sexually unresponsive to other types of stimulation. This could lead to decreased sexual arousal or performance when it comes time to do the deed with a real-life partner. So make sure you mix it up. At the end of the day, masturbation is a safe and healthy activity, so put on some music, light those candles, and have yourself a good night.
And have yourself a good night, or a good day, or whatever. It's funny that there are certain words in the English language that we don't have a lot of words that describe certain. I'll give you an example. The word snow in our vernacular here, it's snow. There's one way to say snow, and that's it. If you're an Eskimo, in Eskimo cultures, there's probably about 15 different ways to say snow, because it's very important to them, because they have to deal with it constantly. So there's packed snow, there's light snow, and each of these is different. So some words, it's odd. Some words in our vernacular, we just have a ton of different ways of describing them. And you'd figure that's because it would be important to us. So I was looking up just different terms and different ways of calling masturbation for men and women, and I came up with a whole bunch that were pretty interesting that I had never heard of. Well, one is called, for instance, for women, saucing the taco. I mean, that's pretty usual. For guys, dating Miss Palmer. I thought that was pretty weird. One I had heard in the past here, pluck the twanger. Easy. One of my favorites here, jerkin the gherkin. Flick the bean, for women, obviously. Jill off, as compared to you-know-what. 5 against 1. That's another one I thought I liked. Again, probably for men. Petting the kitty. For women, polishing the knob. Again, for women. But we have tons. My point is that we have tons of different... polishing the pearl. Another one. Pounding the pud. One I never heard of. Schlick. It has something to do with women. I don't know it. If you know it, you should call us. And by the way, it is a call-in show. If you feel free to talk to us about any experiences you've had or have any questions, feel free to call us at 800-699-0980. Again, that's 800-699-0980. Waxing the carrot. Never heard of that one. And, of course, applying lip gloss, which is for women, obviously. So there's some interesting things in that. And also, they're very interesting things in terms of religion, what religion you are, and how that's really looked upon. And we'll get into that a little bit, I think, with Dr. Colby. And I think I'm going to probably just give him a call and see if we can get him on the air right now and do this deed, so to speak, earlier than I usually would. But let's go ahead and give Dr. Colby a call and see if he's there. And if not, we'll call back in a couple of minutes, because I did tell him I'd be calling him a little bit later. One ringy-dingy.
Hello.
Hi, Dr. Colby. How you doing tonight?
Excellent.
Can you hear me well?
Yes, I can. Can you hear me well?
I can hear you very, very well. Folks, we're listening to, we actually have Dr. Colby on the phone right now, and he has a book out, which is The Rejuvenative Properties of Masturbation, and this is something he's been very involved with, and he's going to talk about this from really some completely different angles. Doc, what kind of doctor are you?
I am a doctor of education.
Ah, okay. I have a master's degree in that very subject. So, how did you get involved with being as deeply involved you are with masturbation? And I don't mean that as a physical sense that you're doing this all day long, but I mean, as an intellectual thing to go ahead and look at.
Excellent. My first encounter with this was when I was serving in the Peace Corps in the country of El Salvador in the mid-'70s. And when I became interested in some literature that was produced by the Gnostico school, And the Gnosticos were basically founded by this Colombian writer, Samael Aunwayor, and he wrote about Eastern sexuality at a time when it was not very popular to write about anything about sexuality. And so, anyways, my having read some of this literature and being quite astounded by this Eastern approach to sexuality, that was really my seminal moment, you may say, in terms of this journey that has taken me
No pun.
over 30 years in just continuing looking at this whole Eastern sexuality perspective, coupling it with now modern medical knowledge, and seeing how the synthesis of the two really produce quite a unique approach to our sexuality.
You know, I was quite interested and amazed, to be quite honest, about the fact that that you make certain assumptions and you lay them out very, very clearly at the beginning of the book, and that some of these are controversial. First, before we get into each of them, why are these particular things controversial?
Well, I would say masturbation in and of itself is very controversial. It is really, I would say generally it is not viewed, well, I mean, again, this is just some of the data I've looked at, some of the perceptions of masturbation. I mean, how often or how openly can we discuss it? And I thank you very much for the opportunity, for giving this forum, for openly talking about the subject. But I think these forums are quite rare within our media, that we can talk like this about the subject.
Well, we try over here to talk about the things that most people really don't want to talk about, and sometimes those are the things you really do need to talk about. I mean, for something that's pretty much practiced by most of humanity, there really shouldn't be any shame involved with it or anything crazy like that going on. There are many, many things, though, that we all do, which are kind of nasty, but feel good, and we all know about that. I mean, that's just how it is. People really don't want to talk about it too much. I don't know why. I guess it's out of embarrassment at this point. Is that what you would figure, that even though everything that we know today, that people are still, it's basically an embarrassment for them to talk about these things?
Absolutely, yeah.
All right. So, look, you did mention a couple of things that you said that you were based on your research. And there is a lot of science, by the way, behind this book, folks, and we'll talk about it again. And give it a little bit of a plug. It is something that I think you should read because it really describes masturbation differently than what you've heard of. And like I said at the beginning, this is not going to be a workshop. We're not going to be practicing here. So if you're here for some type of prurient interest, then go ahead and see that. Just go to like one of the porn sites and you can get all the information you want on how to. We're not going to be doing that today. We're going to be talking about some other things a little bit more brainy and a little bit more interesting to me, at least. And again, feel free to give us a call if you want to join myself and Dr. Colby at 800-699-0980. So the first thing that you talk about, which is something I had never really heard about, was female semen. I was not aware that there was anything close to that that's being produced by women. Can you explain that and how it came about that you found that out?
Well, that is very open. I mean, it's very accessible information on the internet. Female semen. In terms, let me just preface all these comments going to make by saying that the investigation, the research into female sexuality has really lagged far behind the research documentation in male sexuality. So. Yes, there are different fluids produced by the female as she's sexually excited. I mean, obviously, you've seen people squirt urine. There's the vaginal lubrication, and there's this other fluid, which is this fluid that has a lot of the similar ingredients as male semen. It even has prostate-specific antigen, and it is supposedly produced by these paraurethral cells, this Skene's gland, this G spot in the female, which is very similar to the male prostate. The thing about females, although among males it is very, very, you find some variation in size, but all males have it. In terms of the females, I think you're going to find much more of a variation of its appearance in the female anatomy of the individual, and also in the amount of fluid that's produced. Some females will talk about during their peak orgasm producing this fluid. Others, like even Betty Dodson, who was I've been a friend of and who has written a little thing about my book on my website, has said that she's never, I mean, in all her umpteen millennia, I mean, just a lot of sex encounters, has really never felt that she has ever produced a female, like a fluid, this female semen. So, having said that, there are some similarities between it. So, and then you look at similarities in prostate function between male and female. So, there are similarities and differences.
Interesting. So female ejaculate, basically, you'd say is similar chemically to male ejaculate, obviously without sperm?
Yes, that's one opinion. If you look at the ingredients, the assay of ingredients, you'll find about a dozen to 15 similar ingredients in female ejaculate as with in male semen, yes.
Okay, so, you mentioned here about the Surgeon General, Jocelyn Elders, way back in 1994, who suggested discussing this as a matter of in school classes. What happened with all that? Did that ever come to be?
Well, she was ultimately fired as Surgeon General, and because she condoned the teaching of masturbation as a way to just better inform people of their own sexual appetites, with whom to have sex, when to have sex, consequences of having unprotected sex, and so forth. She saw a lot of benefits to the program, but it was just for whatever reason she was fired.
Well, I think she was talking about masturbation in terms of the how-to, and I can understand where some people, I'm a school teacher, I have a degree in education as well, where basically I felt that I should be teaching reading and writing, basically, because I was doing special education, and to go ahead and teach boys how to put condoms on bananas was kind of, I think they get the hang of that themselves. So I don't know that she was actually talking about masturbation in the way that we are tonight, or that we're going to tonight. But obviously, this is a very, very taboo subject. And do you think the schools is the place for this, or is this should be done at home, or is it that because it really isn't being done anywhere, then it must be done in a school?
I would say among the various places where this can be taught, I mean, even within the doctor-patient relationship, this should also be talked about. I mean, talk about their sexual activity, whether the people masturbate. Yes, to be taught in schools, and especially from this venue, this angle that we will be exploring in terms of the healthy, we could call this basically healthy sex for one.
Mm-hmm.
The health benefits that are derived from a robust sex life, whether that's paired or solo, but with this knowledgeable understanding of the workings of our body. With that in mind, great things can be achieved in terms of one's physical well-being, mental well-being, and ultimately spiritual well-being.
Well, that's very good. I'm glad you mentioned the spirituality behind it, because there are different religions, if you will, and with most religions, it's kind of weird because sometimes I like the religion, but not the people that run the religion. But this is obviously different types of cultural things that go on. Do you think that culturally, let's say, I don't know, maybe in ancient times, that people were more aware of this and able to speak about this easily? Because when I visited Pompeii, it was quite obvious that they were involved with sex quite a lot. You had all sorts of, I'm sure you've been there, all sorts of sculptures and things like that. You had the mural of Mercury in Pompeii with a humongous penis on it, and brothels, all sorts of stuff. Have we become more prudish than our ancestors?
Oh, absolutely. And I would like to make mention of this wonderful book that I've been reading. It's called The Secret of the Golden Phallus. And it really is an incredible collection of myths and legends that from ancient Egypt, from so many parts of the world, Celtic religions, phallic myths. It was so prevalent among ancient societies. I mean, just the open display of sexual imagery that we today, of course, view as pornographic. The censorship is such a point that this is dirty. Our bodies are dirty. Our sex is dirty. Our genitals are dirty. That upon doing our function for males of after urinating, wash your hands because you have touched your dirty genitals. I mean, it's a shame. Like you alluded to earlier in our interview, this whole shame concept that's been attached to our sexuality is quite prevalent.
So we're becoming more prudish as we continue to think that we're not, or as we continue to think that we're better or have grown so much more than the ancient world. Very, very interesting. Now, it was also, from what you pointed out, this was also sometimes a rite of passage with kids, I guess, as they became of age. And that included, in some instances, you said where the elders or maybe, I don't know how much older, but they would basically have group masturbation. I don't know if they taught each other how to do that, but that was considered some type of a rite of passage.
Yes, yep. I make allusions of that to the book, and also to this book I just mentioned to you, The Secret of the Golden Phallus. There are also histories of this sort of cultural approach, this cultural group masturbation. Absolutely.
Now, there's obviously lack when men masturbate. There's a lack of fluid disappears, so you have this lack of fluid now, and many people for many, many years thought this was not a good thing because you were just losing so many things that were important to you. And as I read through your book, it seemed like you kind of agreed with that to some extent. But the type of masturbation you're talking about is different than everyday stuff. Am I correct?
Yes. And you alluded to initially this loss of the accessional fluid. It's very interesting looking at an assay of the ingredients of male semen, the vitamins, minerals, trace elements, enzymes, amino acids, and then we get into obviously the presence of the hormones in the semen, but even cancer-fighting agents. So I think semen I guess in most recent contemporary times, has really been given a bad rap. It's sort of like this thing that the man has to periodically get rid of. It becomes stale or toxic to flush the system out periodically. Even when you look back at the big study in 1992 done in Maryland, they had 30,000 men fill out questionnaires. And the ultimate thing was, and even Dr. Oz has quoted this, is saying, men should ejaculate 21 times a month to, keep their prostate functioning properly. And when you look at the data and you look at the entire study, I mean, it's anecdotal data. The 80-year-old men are remembering their ejaculatory frequency when they were in their 20s. It's really just, I look at that and just go, I cringe that is what they're communicating to men to do that, when from another perspective, again, you just look at this, you have basically the semen is like a pharmacy inside our bodies. It has all these wonderful ingredients that are constantly being produced, they're being purified, and they're being like slowly liberated back into the bloodstream to feed the other endocrines, to feed the brain. It's a wonderful substance, and that's what I want to communicate. It's a wonderful substance just to know to masturbate, to edge one's orgasm, not to get to the point of actually releasing the substance, but to really just flutter on that edge, to ride that edge, to feel the wonderful pleasures associated with that moment for an extended period of time. It is very, very invigorating. It's very healthful. It's very restorative.
You also mentioned, there's some things, I don't know if you mentioned them in the book, to be quite honest, but I think that they're worth talking about. How do you feel about hormone therapy for men now? Because it seems to be all the rage. And I got to tell you, I'm thinking of it for myself because I've been more tired recently. I'm in my early 60s. I've been more tired recently. I'm losing muscle mass. I weigh the same, but it's all on my stomach. How do you feel about, from your studies and all of that, if you feel equipped to answer questions about it, about hormone treatment and the things that are being pushed or utilized, depending, I guess, how you view it today?
Right. I've only done a very cursory look occurs, at hormone replacement. I've looked at some of the caveats whereby complications possibly with, involving cancer. You're now using an artificial hormone to replace the lack of the production of a natural hormone. And that pharmacology does have its possible secondary consequences, which one should be aware of when contemplating that line of therapy. Of course, in my book, I'm purporting that the longer we keep our own reproductive tract in function, that we exercise it, our penises and the clitoris and a lot of the vaginal area, it's muscular erectile tissue that requires working out just like any other muscle, bicep, tricep, people that enjoy doing weights. This is something that requires periodic exercise to function properly. When it's functioning properly, it produces all these wonderful, wonderful health benefits. The testosterone is so important just for maintaining muscle mass. It's also important in terms of bone density, bone mass. You look at our production of estrogen, which is a protector of the heart, which is a stimulant of verbal memory in our brains. These are wonderful substances, so let's keep ourselves sexually active over our lifetimes, and the benefits we are to reap are just incredible.
When I was reading through your book, it came to my attention that I don't think a lot of people know this, but men have female hormones and women have male hormones. Can you explain why it's important for a man to have estrogen?
Yes, I guess they work in tandem. You can say estrogen. I mean, with the male testosterone, you have both a psychological component in terms of behavior, in terms of male aggressiveness. You have the formation of the typical male characteristics of the body, and then, of course, the production of the genitalia and everything, the sexual reproductive function that goes with that. With estrogen, you have a different psychological effect. It is the less aggressive. It's the more, I would say, compassionate effect. You have the protection of the heart, which is so important. And again, we talked about earlier this whole thing about memory, especially verbal memory, the speaking ability. So they all form part of a package. We cannot live, an entirely pure testosterone male. We need the female component to balance who we are psychologically and physiologically.
So it's as men age and they start to lose that testosterone ability, the estrogen kind of takes over a little bit more, and you get that stereotypical grandpa who's kind of now doting over the children and has other interests that just never really appeared. And then you have, on the other side, you have the woman who now is all of a sudden become way more aggressive, is getting a little bit of facial hair, and I guess that's because their estrogen now is dropping, and so it's kind of odd because it still is a balance of some type, but the balance kind of gets weird as you get old.
Absolutely. And one major impact of that imbalance is the lack of sexual function. That once the sex glands start reducing their production, it sends the other endocrines a little out of whack.
And again, folks, if you'd like to join us, feel free to. It's 800-699-0980. Again, 800-699-0980. You mentioned something about male aggressiveness being tied directly to testosterone. Now, I know we have 700 to 800 times more testosterone than women do, and that's a hell of a big difference. I mean, we're not talking about a little bit here. I think that if a woman had as much testosterone as us, she'd go nuts. I don't know that they'd be able to really handle it. Maybe something that men have to deal with through the course of their lives. There are certain universities right now that are teaching men how to deal with their quote-unquote male toxicity. Any opinions on that?
Oh, well, I'd like you to speak a little more as to the nature of the course.
basically, there are people that say that men are too aggressive and they should be feminized in some way. And you have to learn how to deal with how toxic you are as a man. So being a man is being considered in certain places on campuses to be much less of a good thing than it would be to be a woman. And that you have to go ahead and just like you have to go ahead and check your privilege, you have to go ahead and watch your male toxicity because that aggressiveness is just not needed or warranted anymore. Like as if you're a guy and you're aggressive, then you're like you're a throwback to the caveman, and no one wants to go knock women on their head and drag them around by their hair.
Mm-hmm.
So this is not new to you, is it? You've never heard of this?
Oh, it is. Absolutely. Absolutely.
Oh, okay.
Yes, you're informing me at this point. Thank you.
All right. Not a problem. Not a problem at all. But this is something that's being taught. How to control your maleness, I guess, would be the way to look at it. And I think it's a shame because I think men are supposed to be how they're supposed to be. And yeah, you get some crazy people that are aggressive and they're criminals. And let's face it, most criminals are men, and most violent criminals are men. Doesn't mean women are not part of that group, but they sure are a small percentage compared to men. So there are women that would like to kind of feminize men, and a lot of people feel that that's been going on in the environment anyway. You have any information on the amount of estrogens that are just now available? And because I understand now, in general, I read some articles that sperm production is basically down in men as compared to what it was, let's say, 30, 40 years ago.
Yeah, I've read similar data.
Mm-hmm. So
Yes.
they're saying that's because of, I guess, plastic in the environment and some other environmental factors that go ahead and switch people up.
Those are all possible. Yes.
All possible. Okay. Something else I was looking at, and I think you may have mentioned it later on, is that, just like your foot has reflex points that involve
Yes.
other parts of the body, so do the genitals.
Yes.
Can you explain,
Absolutely.
talk a little bit about that?
Yes, this information I gleaned from Dr. Stephen Chang, who is a renowned Taoist sexologist. And in his book...
Can you explain that?
Tao,
There are people who may not know what that means.
Okay. Well, from a Taoist perspective, within ancient China, you would have the discipline of the Tao. Tao itself is finding balance. Within the Tao, there's a Taoist alchemy, and the alchemy dealt with a very, very detailed understanding of the endocrine system and the various energy centers that were located near each of our endocrines. And they understood certain practices that would enable life energy to stimulate our endocrine systems to heighten levels of physical ability, of mental ability, i.e. it's very fundamental for those who practice Kung Fu to have some probably understanding or connection with some sort of Taoist, whether it's breathing exercises or directing of chi energy in punches and what have you. So there's a Taoist thing, alchemical in the sense that it is transformative. You are taking what is basically your raw materials, but you're working with them, and you're transforming them into something more subtle, more liberating of its essence or energy.
But just to get kind of specific, whether the gland of the penis then would be related to what organ?
That heart and lungs, up on the top.
Up on the top, heart and lungs, and
yes.
And testicles would be.
Right now I'm not bringing into complete recall the.
Oh, okay. I don't mean to quiz you. I just thought it was interesting, and I assume.
But yes. It basically, there are 6 organs that are supposedly connected through the that goes both for men and women, and
that's
it's
what I was
just
going to
inverted.
ask.
Yes. So for the glands of the penis, heart, and lungs, the deepest part of the vagina is heart and lungs.
Oh wow! See, I would have thought it would have been clitoris because that's kind of like the reminds me more of the penis, But okay, but there are you do get a release and a benefit then from masturbation in terms of general function of other organs in the body.
Basically, the response of the body is that when one becomes sexually stimulated, there are signals sent up to the brain. It goes to the pituitary hypothalamus, and the pituitary gets these signals and goes, okay, I'm going to start to produce my target hormones. And it sends out target hormones to the thyroid, to the adrenals, and to the sex glands, to the thyroids, to boost the metabolism so you get a nice metabolic workout when you're sexually active. It sends it down to the adrenals. You're producing, the stress reducer, cortisol, but also it's producing some sex hormones, testosterone and estrogen. And then it's sending the signal down into our sex glands to produce their wonderful substances, our sex hormones, testosterone, estrogen. It's saying get that semen production going, getting all those vital nutrients there moving. And it's an ecstatic, wonderful, divine state to be in.
Obviously, so very, very pleasurable, and obviously doing something good. It's funny, when I was like even 7 or 8 years old, I remember I used to masturbate, and of course everything was dry, nothing came out because I was young, and because people really weren't talking about it, or you couldn't talk about it. The first time something came out, it scared the crap out of me. I didn't know what it was. I thought there was something wrong with me. And I went to my parents with it and told them what happened. They just kind of looked at each other, and at that point in time, they didn't say anything. They just said, don't worry about it, there's nothing wrong. And I got no explanation, but I was scared as a child because that happened. And then I guess you learn how to enjoy after a while. Nothing happens. You go ahead and you ejaculate, and the world doesn't come to an end, and the sky is still out there, and nothing really changes all that much. But that's why it's important, folks, to talk about this kind of stuff. If you do this, if you feel you're out there and you do this too frequently, let us know. Give us a call. If you have any experience about masturbation that you have, please give us a call. Again, the number here is 800-699-0980. We would like to spread the word about this particular science, and appreciate the phone calls should you desire. I understand also that you mentioned this, and I hope maybe you can explain it a little bit better than what I got out of it, but there is a definite relationship between semen, which now we're saying, folks, it's not a male thing. That's semen, male and female, but there's a relationship between that and spinal fluids, and that somehow that creates a connection between the genital system and the neurologic system. And we know that all of the stuff that happens with us happens first through our neurology, through the brain. People say the brain is actually the main sex organ. And then there's obviously physiologic responses that go ahead with that, lubrication in women, erections in men. But how can you kind of explain that relationship?
Again, reframe your question. What is the relationship between what items would you like explained?
What is the relationship between semen and cerebral spinal fluid?
Oh, okay. Mm-hmm. Yes. Again, a basic analysis of each fluid shows that cerebral spinal fluid has between 12, about a dozen to 15 of the same ingredients as male semen does. On a basic level, what does that mean? I mean, the brain, through its, I think it's, what is it called, the choroid plexus or something, that particular organ inside the brain that is really producing all the cerebral spinal fluid, this fluid that's so important for the buoyancy and also for the conductivity of all the neural stuff that's going on inside our brains. That's produced at a certain rate per day. The excess that we don't use that gets filtered out to the brain is passed out through our urine. But there's a number of ingredients within that are found in semen, so that the thinking being that if one were to over-ejaculate to the point of it being almost like a chronic thing that was going on, could that have an impact upon the brain chemistry? Would there be at some point a depletion or an unavailability or lack of availability of certain nutrients that the brain needs to produce its cerebral spinal fluid? And would there be then the consequential repercussions from that imbalance, chemical imbalance in the cerebral spinal fluid? Would there be any sort of mental, psychological sensorial impact. So that would be the dynamic there.
Now, you mentioned, and I'm going to quote a little bit from the book, it says, frequent ejaculation thus can cause chronic drain of vital components that the brain and spine require for their proper function and nutrition. This can cause such increasingly common conditions as premature senility, inability to concentrate, chronic depression, loss of sexual drive, and a host of other related symptoms. Now, that would lead, I guess, just the reader in general to say that masturbation really isn't good for you.
I guess, again, the real key term here is the frequent ejaculation. The Taoists prescribe a formula. I mean, I myself am I'm a practitioner of semen retention, so I do not ejaculate. However, from a Taoist perspective, they prescribe a 0.2 formula, which they consider is ample time for a refractory period for a male to recover to the point that, he's gotten his semen back up to its right constituency, the brain has returned to its correct chemistry, and so forth. It's basically multiply your age by 0.2, and that's the number of days one would require for a refractory period between ejaculations. So if one is 20 years old, it would be 4 days. If one is 50 years old, it would be 10 days.
So I'd have to really wait.
Yeah.
I'd be probably once a month or something by now.
Well, in the interim, I would suggest you follow some of the practices outlined in my book in The Rejuvenating Powers of Masturbation.
That's funny. There were jokes about like condoms, how many you'd buy, and the Jewish set was, well, you buy the 12-pack, and they said, well, why so many for Jews? 12-pack. They said, well, it's January. February, so but I guess there's some truth in that. There's truth, I guess, in lots of stuff if you really look for it. There's always some type of kernel of good or something like that going on with all this stuff. Now, you said that I wanted to get into also a little bit now because you just mentioned it. You masturbate, but you do not ejaculate. Am I correct?
That is correct. Yes.
I got to tell you, that whole thing gives me the creeps. It feels like sneezing without sneezing to me. You know what I mean? I don't feel I've done anything unless I've had your regular orgasm. Now, as I'm getting older, I imagine that the fluid volume production is less. It feels the same, but I imagine the fluid volume is less. But the idea of trying to hold that back, and I've done that once or twice, just trying to sustain a nice, pleasurable sexual situation. And sometimes if I do that, I will then start to lose feeling, and that kind of ends it for me. And I sometimes will feel congested about that, but I always did when I was younger. Now, not so much. But you're saying that's okay. Is it something that you need to practice? How would that go about that you'd go ahead and you'd be in the throes of orgasm and you don't ejaculate?
It's termed edging the orgasm. It's getting to the threshold of the irreversible desire or irreversible reaction to ejaculate, getting to the threshold there. And you're right, it does require practice, but initially just, getting up to that point for short periods of time, then just letting the energy reduce a little bit, then returning back up to that threshold point. That is, again, termed edging an orgasm. One can do that for extended periods of time. One is feeling it is orgasmic, but not to the point of ejaculatory. The pleasures are incredible. What is going on through the entire nervous system of that sexual energy, which is such a unique form of energy when you think of the various stimuli that we process, how sexual energy is so unique in its pleasure, but also in what it is producing in terms of the body's reaction. There's no other exercise, your physical exercise, your workouts, your runs. I go to Planet Fitness. I go there 7 days a week. I'm in really good shape. I'm 66 years old. But there's no other exercise that substitutes sex in terms of the real positive and potent response of the endocrine system, especially when you look at the sex glands. And those sex hormones are the most vital in terms of just our health.
So we got church bells in the background or something.
Oh yes, we have. I have a TikTok clock.
Oh, all right, all right.
Yes, yes.
When I was looking through the book, there was one diagram you had that described it. Said spirit was on top, matter's on the bottom. Then you had yin and yang, right side of the body, left side of the body, and you have basically a very Judaic symbol on this body. Jews who are Kabbalistic would call this the tree of life, and it actually is the 10 different energy types of energies it stands for that human beings have and that connect us from the lower worlds to the upper worlds. Were you aware of that at all?
I use that symbol as a symbol from a Taoist genre, without a deep understanding of the symbology that was integrated into the image, as you're just telling me right now. So, yes, it's an amazing image, but I don't have deep understanding of it.
Yeah, it is. It's pretty cool because basically it has the 3 on the top, which are basically near the head, and they are the head. In Hebrew, they have Hebrew names for it, and the names in English, if you translate them, don't make any sense. One is called wisdom, or the other is called knowledge. The other one is information, if you will. Then you have other ones that basically it's like a flow chart. And you even have the lines connecting them with the Kabbalists would call those pathways. So it was just interesting when I saw that because I related it to Judaism. And as you know, Judaism, old-fashioned Judaism, would basically say, no, you don't go ahead and you masturbate. To do that, that's something called spilled seed. And it's mentioned in the Old Testament about how, and there's different interpretations of that. I've heard certain people say that means you cannot masturbate. I've heard some people say that means you can't spill seed onto the floor. I've heard people say that that means that you can go ahead and maybe do fellatio, oral sex, but you shouldn't orgasm with it. And I've had some people say that makes no difference at all. That's not the same thing. So basically in life, you do what you want. But depending on the religion you have, you may have different experiences and different types of upbringing that you went through because of that. And I'm not going to bother you with it, but maybe when we're done here, I'll play 1 or 2 videos from a rabbi and people can kind of get like a comparative religious look at what we're talking about. But you're saying basically that the production of semen and all of these uses, these help control various spiritual aspects of the human being.
Well, I would say, given this practice of recycling one's own just incredibly nutritional, beneficial, helpful juices, that one is elated, one is benefited. Spiritually, the act of this, I guess we probably shouldn't use the word masturbation because so many people connote that just with like a quick fix, I got to just jack off and ejaculate. This is absolutely not the same thing as you alluded to earlier. This is, again, we could call this more like healthy sex for one. Undergoing this.
By the way, in the Quran, there's a lot of that basically they don't recommend masturbation, but it is okay under certain circumstances. They consider it like food. If you've not had food for a couple of days, you want to go ahead and eat. So they kind of look at that too. If you haven't had sex, you need to, just like you would have food, you would need to go ahead and get rid of something.
Yes.
So I'm sorry, I think I interrupted you. We're talking about the spirituality behind it.
Yes, the act itself, it enhances one's own self-love. There's a love of one's own self, one's body, one's response to one's body, one's own genitalia, without any sort of social norm, without any sort of free conditions. It's an unconditional surrender to oneself, love for oneself, appreciation for oneself, and working with oneself to produce these sort of dynamic reactions, these dynamic possibilities, these healthful benefits. So So, I mean, just the whole nurturing of one's self-love is enabling one then to have a joie de vivre, a joy of life, a joy of living, and just projecting that to others and loving others, instead of feeling deprived or sexually frustrated or what have you.
Now, when I was a little bit more spiritually oriented, and it was based on some Orthodox Judaism and Kabbalistic thought, um, I was told this had nothing to do with masturbation because that was just considered, you don't do that. But they said that you have to, in anything, it should never always be for yourself. So if you're having sex, it's not necessarily for yourself. There's three columns. There's not a yin and a yang. There's a yin, a yang, and something else. That something else is called a center column that kind of integrates both of it. It's described pretty much as you have a positive pole and a negative pole, and then in between it you have a filament. And that's what makes the whole thing work. If you don't have the filament, you have no light. If the filament blows up, you have no light. So you need kind of three things going on. So in terms of sex, or what they said that when you're having sex with your partner, it's between you and your partner, and it also is between the creator as well. And they said that, and this is hard to do, that if you're in the throes of having an orgasm, you should go ahead and basically have in your mindset that this is for the creator, that this is something to do with the creation of things, and have it not really be just your own pleasure or your wife's pleasure, but pleasure for the creator as well. And I got to tell you, other than screaming, "My God," during the throes of orgasm, it's really hard to do. But if you do it, it does seem to work. It seems if you have the consciousness behind things, that it really seemed to offer more pleasure, or at least you felt that you were doing something on a higher or a bigger spiritual realm. And I'm kind of keying that into what you're talking about, because you're talking a lot of spirituality here, and basically, like you said, Taoist techniques and things like that. How does what you're describing in terms of orgasm, how does that compare to like tantric orgasms, or is it the same thing?
What I'm describing is basically the same thing.
It's the same thing.
You're getting to that threshold, and maintaining that over a long period of time. And yes,
Okay.
same thing.
Same thing. All right, so good. At least some people out there I know understand a little bit of that. Now, are there types of orgasms?
Well, especially I can't speak for women, but you probably read, and again in Taoist literature, they talk about 9 levels of female orgasms. So there's quite a quite a spectrum, quite a spectrum there.
More levels for women than men?
Say again?
Are there more levels for women than men?
Well, just from literature, again, I don't know. I don't feel I'm in any sort of capacity to actually quantify orgasm. I've never done experiments of such or anything. So, again, just looking at literature, I would again say that, obviously for a man, the culmination of the orgasm, of the full body orgasm, is the ejaculation. But there is all that pre-ejaculative threshold energy, which is basically that orgasmic energy. Just keep that vibrating at that particular very high level, which is so, it lasts for such a long time. So instead of that big shot, the big pleasure shot, one is having a slightly reduced, instead of the 100%, it's a 99%, but over extended. It could go for hours, periods of time. That's transformational. It's actually a wonderful experience, wonderful exercise.
Hours, boy! At this time in my life, my arms would give way certainly before my penis.
Just make sure you switch hands. That's what you got to.
This is like a new date, then, right? I think
well, that's another thing. Something else, Michael, you may have been missing. Don't forget the fantasy. The mind is the foremost erogenous zone. Fantasize. Nobody else is going to be watching in on you. You have complete liberty to do whatever you want.
Yeah. Well, look, I once bought my right hand some flowers. Maybe I got to get some type of Valentine's Day card for it. But I'm curious. I want to talk a little bit about technique, and I'm not talking about how to masturbate. I would assume
Hmm.
folks out there, you don't need to have that technique. If not, we're not going to be doing visit. We're not going to do that. But this whole tantric idea of you're masturbating now, you're by yourself. How do you practice that? What do you need to do to yourself to kind of control the urge and to control the flow?
Okay, the very good question. First, in terms of the urge, again, it's taking practice, working the sexual excitedness up to that point before there's the irreversible reaction, the irreversible ejaculation, the spasm. That is working with the urge. Now, the other term you mentioned was, repeat for me again, please.
And I was just curious about technique to do this. You say, I mean, do
You
you?
mentioned the urge and something else. And just,
I don't recall. It was the urgent.
okay,
It's you kind of covered what I'm talking about. But I mean, do
okay.
you just are you sitting there then and just saying, I'm not going to come now. I'm not going to come. I'm not going to have an
Oh
orgasm.
no, excuse me, Mike, I got it now. You said the urge and the flow.
Urge in the flow.
Yes, yeah. Okay, let me go back to the flow. So we talked about the urge, getting to the threshold. The flow is that instead of allowing the flow to go outside in terms of an ejaculation, you are at the threshold using sphincter contractions to pull the sexual energy through the gonad area, past the perineum, up to the coccyx, up the spine, and into the head. And that is the basic practice. It can get a little more complicated after that. We can talk about that if you'd like, but that's the basic pathway as opposed to the outward expression of sexual energy. It's the inward expression.
Of sexual
Again,
energy.
yes, inward expression.
Are you thinking at this point, if you're a guy, and we haven't really talked too much about how this happens with women. I mean, I assume women can have tantric orgasms, or they don't have any concern with that because they could just have multiples anyway.
Go ahead.
Uh, the, so, do you, as you're masturbating, are you saying to yourself when you feel close to that urge, are you saying, "Gee, what's my favorite sports?" You're trying to take your mind off it. Are you trying to concentrate more on it? Are you like grabbing yourself? I've heard like for premature ejaculation, you go ahead and you place your thumb on the frenum and you just press real hard, or on the base of the penis, or anything like that. Are there any physical
Right.
things that could help people out with it?
Yes, okay. Very good. I would say the mantra here is the term sensate focus.
Mm-hmm.
Sensate focus, the focus of one's senses. When one gets to that threshold, it then becomes a focus. It's no longer there's no mental dialogue, there are no distractions, there's no thinking of or fantasizing. One is now in a complete unified state of just that sexual energy is now, it's inundated the brain with pleasure, it's illuminated the brain, it's the whole body is scintillating in pleasure. That is the sensate focus, to focus on.
So it's all up in the mind again. It's all brain related.
It is definite mind control, but with practice, it gets to the point that they are pleasurably, they're writable with great pleasure, almost with a certain abandon. It's not like one is so exercising one's mind to say, "Oh, stay back! Oh, wait a minute! Oh, no." There's an old grandfather clock chiming there,
That's
but
fine.
no, it becomes a practice, that it's a discipline, and I share with our listenership this evening the acronym CANDY, consistent and never-ending discipline improvement. So CANDY with an I in the end. Consistent and never-ending discipline improvement is one practices this, one improves. It took me a long time initially when I completely reversed my masturbatory habit from one of being a consummate masturbator with full-body orgasm to one that said, no, I'm completely turning that mechanism off in me. It was not an easy transition from mind and body. It took me time.
I see. So you said you were a consummate masturbator?
Yes, especially when I was in the Peace Corps in the Tonga Islands. I was there in the early 70s, and, living alone. This was when my hormones were surging. I was on a Pacific paradise of an out island. Wore no shoes for 2 years, no running water, no electricity. And Tongan coconut oil is an excellent lubricant.
We'll have to get some at the store. I think CVS has that.
I don't know if you can find it. It has to be homemade.
Has to be homemade.
It's a wonderful emollient, if I may say so.
Tonga, such an interesting set of islands, actually. Tonganese.
Yes.
I think they were in the news recently, but and I don't know. They may be represented at the Olympics, which is a whole nother thing. I'm just curious. Do women have to kind of practice this stuff like men do, or is it not germane to women because they have multiple orgasms anyway?
I'd say the act of channeling the sexual energy, as opposed to making it an exercise of just a release, but of channeling, of consciously bringing inward the sexual energy of, again, going up the spine. And in my book, I show basically the pathways, but it's basically just trekking up the spine and up into the head to the crown, and that sort of exercise, inwardly channeling the energy, is invigorating. And so
that's a male or female thing. It makes no difference.
Oh, absolutely, it makes no difference. Both sexes can channel the energy. In terms of the orgasm, of course, those are they have some similarities, but quite a few differences also in terms of their.
Some people out there, they just have sex to have sex, and it becomes very, very shallow and meaningless in certain ways. But I was always of the opinion that it's as far as shallow and meaningless experiences go, it's probably one of the best. Best of those experiences that you could get. If people want to learn more about what you do, about your books, or get in touch with you, how could they contact you?
The best way is through my website, which is very simply the letters THERPOM.com, and which basically stands for and with the abbreviation Rejuvenating Power of Masturbation, RPOM.
Right, THERPOM for people out there. It's THERPOM, or the Rejuvenating Properties of Masturbation, THERPOM.com, and that would be the best way to get in touch with Dr. Kolbe if you want to go ahead and discuss this more or get any other information. Can they get your book on Amazon? Is that available there?
It is available on Amazon Kindle. Hard copies available at Barnes & Noble. Also, you'll get the best prices on my website for the book. I also have a DVD which has 3 parts. It has basically a visual summary of the book, and then it has a discussion among adults about masturbation, and then it finishes off the final part with an actually filmed practice session with one male and 2 females, individually filmed, but showing just what this whole aspect of kindling the sexual fires and then of channeling that sexual energy.
I want to thank you so much for joining us this evening. It's been interesting for me. I'm surprised we didn't get a call in here, but you still can call. We can talk about stuff. 800-699-0980. Doctor, I'm going to say goodnight to you, and thank you once again for joining us on the Michael Blum Show. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you very much, Michael.
No problem. I'm sure we'll speak in the future. All right, folks, so that was Dr. Kolbe. I'm going to continue with the subject for a little bit, just to, because we did talk about a few things, and this is going to talk about, I'm not sure if this is a rabbi, I'm not sure who he is, but he probably is a rabbi. It's an Orthodox rabbi, and he's going to explain basically from a Judaic perspective why probably all of this guilt and problems relating to actually even speaking about the subject have occurred. So just check this out.
There is the sin that's called wasting seed, which means a person that wasted his seed without his wife in a kosher way. Every drop of seed is a horrible sin, even if it was not intentional. But not intentional is the 3rd section in hell. Person goes in, he cleans, his soul gets clean like a dry clean for the soul, and one day he comes out of there and go to heaven and cash on his rewards that Hashem owes him. But if it's intentional, everybody should know, if it's intentional waste of seed, he goes to the 7th section, which is the lowest, and the Zohar, and it appears in Reshit Chochmah, in the chapter of Ira, of fear, of Ira. It's appear over there that there are 3 sins.
You see, in Judaism, everyone goes to hell. It's Gehinnom. It's looked more as a dry cleaning experience that cleans your soul so that you can pass on to wherever you need to be.
Once a person make them, he goes to the 7th section. If he dies without tshuva, without repentance, if he died without tshuva, he goes to the 7th section and never ever come out of there for eternity. I know it's hard to believe, but that's what it says word by word, and I'm not the one to modify the Torah. I'm not reformed yet. This is what the Zohar and the Reshit Chochmah says. First one, Mechalel Shabbat on purpose. Not keeping Shabbat knowing it's the eternal covenant with God, and he goes to work in his barber shop, cutting hair. Okay? It's not funny. It's very sad for this person. Making $200 or $300 a day and lose his eternity. Very bad investment. Male or female. Shabbat is eternal covenant for everyone, even converts. Converted? Too late, my friend, to go back to Vinny and Tony. No, that's it. You're in now. No, but it's too hard for me, Rabbi. I didn't know it's going to be so hard. You have a Jewish soul already. Cannot go back. You have to keep Shabbat. You don't keep Shabbat, you get punished just like a Jew from birth. No way back. That's why we have to tell the converts 100 times before. Make sure you understand what you're doing. Don't put yourself in a jeopardy. You can stay righteous Gentile. You have no problem. No wasting seed by the Goyim, even though it says that it's an ugly thing for them to do, and they will get punishment, but they don't have anything like a Jew. There's nothing, the holiness of the seed of a Jewish man to a non-Jewish man is nothing to compare. You understand? But for them, there's no sin. He meets Christine in a bar, he goes in with her, they live like husband and wife tonight. They met 5 hours ago. 2 hours ago, it's not a sin for them. A Jew that does it with another Jew, horrible, horrible sin. No words to describe how big is the sin. Or all the other ways, and keeping Shabbat, and even in modesty. The Goyot, the Gentiles also have to be modest, but nothing like the Jewish female. There is this.
Now, when they say a sin, here he is not really saying, it's not like you have sinned, that kind of thing. They're talking about giving up energy in an inappropriate way, or to sources and things that are less than doing it for the purpose of good and or the Creator. So it's a little bit of a different kind of a concept.
Sin that's called wasting seed, which means the person that wasted his seed without his wife in a kosher way. Every drop of seed is a horrible sin, even if it was not intentional. But not intentional is the 3rd section in hell. Person goes in, he cleans, his soul gets clean like a dry clean for the soul, and one day he comes out of there and go to heaven and cash on his rewards that Hashem owes him. But if it's intentional...
I'm going to move this forward a little bit.
But
so
if it's eternity, I know it's in here. Okay? It's not funny. It's very sad. No, but it's too hard for me, Rabbi. I didn't know it's going to be so hard. You have a Jewish soul already. Cannot you're doing. Don't put yourself in a jeopardy. You can stay righteous Gentile. You have no problem. No wasting seed by the Goyim, even though it says that it's an ugly thing for them to do, and they will get punishment, but they don't have anything like a Jew. There's nothing, the holiness of the seed of a Jewish man to a non-Jewish man is nothing to compare. You understand? But for them, there's no sin. He meets Christine in a bar, he goes in with her, they live like husband and wife tonight. They met 5 hours ago, 2 hours ago. It's not a sin for them. A Jew that does it with another Jew, horrible, horrible sin. No words to describe how big is the sin. Or all the other ways, and keeping Shabbat, and even in modesty. The Goyot, the Gentiles also have to be modest, but nothing like the Jewish female.
And hence Jewish guilt. Interesting. Now, a lot of people believe this wholeheartedly, a lot of people believe this half-heartedly, and a lot of people just don't believe it at all. That's always up to what you feel and your desires and how you kind of perceive things. I'm going to take a quick break. We're going to come back. I was asked to comment a couple of things about some of the stuff in the news, and then we will wrap it up. You've been listening to the Michael Blum Show, and I will be speaking to you in but a moment or two.
Hi, this is Dr. Michael Blum. I just moved my practice down the block to my new office at JJ Dental, just 4 blocks south of my old office. I chose JJ Dental because it's a 5-star rated practice. That's why you should choose them too. Call 954-463-7262 and ask for an appointment with me, Dr. Blum, or any other of the fine dentists at JJ Dental, creating beautiful, healthy smiles that last a lifetime. Call 954-463-7262 and visit us online at jjdentalpractice.com. Hi, this is Michael Blum. Join me on Mondays from 9 to 11 p.m. for the Michael Blum Show, where we talk about the things you don't want to talk about. We talk about sex, substance abuse, spirituality, and politics. Think, speak, and be heard. Join us on the Michael Blum Show.
This is Steve Kane, and I'm in studio today with Dr. Jonathan Cook of JJ Dental. Dr. Cook, what are people looking for when they choose a dentist?
A bunch of things. I would say number one, first and foremost, they're looking for somebody who they get a sense that they care. And, I know for me that would be number one. Also, obviously, convenience. Location is an important factor. I mean, most people aren't driving miles and miles in their car to get to whoever it is that they need to see, whether it's a dentist or a doctor or whoever. But we're in downtown Fort Lauderdale. A very convenient location.
You don't waste their time, is the feeling I get.
No. We want to make it very easy for patients in and out.
What is that line? Just because they call it a waiting room doesn't mean you have to spend your whole day waiting.
There you go. Exactly. Yeah. Precisely.
Call Dr. Cook at JJ Dental for an appointment. The number, 954 area code 463-7262, or online at jjdentalpractice.com.
Hi, this is Michael Blum. If you would like to be part of the Michael Blum Show and be a sponsor, call us at 800-524-8040 or email me at michael@michaelblumshow.com. We could have been listening to your commercial for your business rather than this stuff. Call us at 800-524-8040.
This is Steve Kane with Dr. Jonathan Cook from JJ Dental. Jonathan, I was just blown away by the reviews that your patients left online.
Yeah, sure. My website and Yelp, Google Places, Facebook, you name it. There's plenty of places to go to find 5-star reviews and read what our patients are saying about us.
You heard Dr. Cook. Go online, read his reviews. You'll be blown away too. And then call for an appointment, 954-463-7262, or online at jjdentalpractice.com.
Hi. At the Michael Blum Show, we talk about the things you don't want to talk about. If in your own personal life you have an experience or an event or something that's changed you, we'd love to hear about it and maybe get your story on air. Feel free to give us a call, 800-699-0980. Again, that's at 800-699-0980. Or feel free to email me at michael@blumradio.com. That's Michael, M-I-C-H-A-E-L, at blumradio, B-L-U-M radio.com. And we will get in touch with you and put your story on the air. And now, back to the Michael Blum Show. Join us by calling 800-699-0980. Think, speak, and be heard. And now, here's Michael Blum.
Reality Radio.
Well, we're back, but not for long. We're going to end it all in a couple of minutes. Again, last time to go ahead, and I'm going to maybe publish the phone number when I actually do the stream so that everyone will just have it there in front of them. Because I miss talking to some people here. And it would be nice to get a phone call at 800-699-0980. I was, I'm not going to get into any of these things very, very heavily here. As a matter of fact, this may be just like We talked about masturbation. This is kind of like kind of political masturbation where I'm just going to shoot some loads out there and see how it all goes. We talked about the memo on at least two shows. And of course, now the Democrats have their own memo. We want our memo too. So we now have son of memo, memo number two. And as soon as I heard that, I said, well, this is very simple. They got nothing to say. The truth is the truth, and you can't deal with facts honestly um, if they have anything to do with Trump doing anything whatsoever right, or this whole presidency doing anything right. So basically, I'm not all that shocked that they would like to have a memo, but the purpose of their memo is different. They can put all sorts of stuff in their memo, you see, and then Trump has to redact it, and then they go, you see, he's hiding something. They could say that, Trump Jr. or Barron smokes pot, and he would have to go ahead and cross that out. Now, you'd never know what's redacted, obviously, because it's been redacted, and it's supposedly top secret or whatever, but all it is a ploy to make him look bad. And there were a couple of ways to handle it. He basically gave it back to them and said, look, you know that there's stuff in here that needs to be redacted. You fix it and then give it back to me. One way of handling it. I don't know if I would have gone that way. He could have actually given it back to the FBI and said, look, these are the things that the Democrats want me to release. What do you think? And then he could have had the support then, if possible, from the Federal Bureau of Matters on his side. That's another way to do it. Or the third way, which is probably what I would have done, is I would have called Chuck U. Schumer and the Flying Witch Pelosi, and I probably would have said to them, look, you gave me this thing. I'm releasing everything here unredacted so that the world can see what you've actually put into it. That's what I would have liked to have seen happen. I would have liked them to say, all right, you think this is all good? You're giving it to me? I have a feeling you want me to redact things, so I will not. All of this stuff goes out, and then we could actually see what everything was with that. I have a funny feeling that you will not hear about this memo anymore because it didn't work. The ploy was to get Trump looking bad and looking like he's holding back on something and hiding things, and that didn't happen. It's amazing how politics kind of affects everything in life. And also, I've been watching the Olympics. People ask me to make a comment. Well, I don't have the male ganglion in my head that has anything really to do with sports. I like watching the stuff, but I don't go nuts for it. And the Olympics, to me, to be quite honest, from what I've seen right now, they're a bore. You have basically in an hour, you have probably 45 minutes of people blah, 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 talking about whatever. The commentary is just like endless. It goes on and on and on. And then maybe you got a couple of minutes of people actually doing things. So even as a spectator with that, I'm not that thrilled with it. It is funny to me that they're complaining about how cold it is at the Winter Olympics. I mean, well, what can you do? It is all global warming now, isn't it? But it's kind of odd that that's what they're complaining about. It is weird to me to watch media kind of suck up to the sister of Kim Jong-un. I think she's one of their ministers of propaganda. She's responsible for genocide of her own people. But because she grimaced and hates Pence, then she's a star in the media. And I think she's getting a little bit too much press coverage from that. But unfortunately, once politics gets involved with anything, things become bad. It's like politics plus X equals bullshit all the time. Once you add politics into it, you don't get a true representation of anything anymore. The other thing I was asked to just quickly comment about was the portraits were released today of Obama, the official presidential portraits of Obama and Michelle, First Lady. And I looked at both of them, and they were very interesting pictures. I kind of like the one that Obama's in. He's sitting on a chair, a wooden chair, kind of with his hands near his lap. He doesn't look all that happy, but I think in terms of the style and his face and shading and everything like that, I think it really looked pretty good. The only thing I kind of didn't like was that they put him in front of a floral background. And when I say floral background, I don't mean really flowers. There are some of them, but it's lots of green leaves. So it looks like he's sitting like in the Doobie collection. Maybe he'll have a poke later on. Or maybe the reason he looks like he has a grimace is because he's just holding it in. Could be too. Now, the picture of Michelle, interesting also, but in a different way. Absolutely flat. And there are certain artists, modern artists, that used to just paint like a square of red. And they said this is art because of the application of that color and how flat it is. There's nothing very, very lifelike about it. When I look at the picture of Michelle Obama, it looks like a cartoon to me. No shading whatsoever, wearing an enormous giant dress. I don't think it did her as much justice as it should have. But again, that's my opinion, and that's how art really, really works. It's a matter of what you think and not what other people think. All right, firing away. Next thing is the budget that was passed by our friends in the Republican Party and a bunch of people in the Democratic Party as well. There's no question in my mind right now that, and I've said this so many times on this show, and it always seems to be something I need to repeat. The problem with the United States government is the United States government. And a problem never solves itself. The problem will not solve the problem. Hence, Trump. Drain the swamp already. Drain the swamp. The swamp won, as far as I'm concerned, on this budget. Because just like, oh, yeah, we're going to repeal Obamacare and repeal and replace, repeal and replace. You hear that for 8 years and then zilch, zero, nothing going on? Because Republicans are used to not winning. The Republicans don't know how to lead, and they are part of the swamp as well as the Democrats. They are pretty much like the Avis party. They're second, and they are much more comfortable just ridiculing and criticizing people without doing a goddamn thing than are the Democrats. The Democrats actually like to rule. Unfortunately, when they rule, they destroy. You know, anything that would be good for the United States basically is not good for the liberal left, because obviously we need to be punished for such a horrible country. That's why you have Obama starting off with an apology tour. So the budget is a massive increase in spending. Now, Trump never ran as a small government guy. He's not really a conservative. He's acted conservatively quite often in office right now. But this is just ridiculous. This is just nothing. This is just nothing. Unless you deal with the amount of entitlements, and I hate that word, and I'll explain why, you're not going to ever really get anything. I mean, people, $1 trillion is a huge number. When we say we're coming up to $20 trillion dollars of debt, you got to understand that $1 trillion seconds ago was over 30,000 years. That's how big a number we're dealing with. So this is no joke. We have to stop spending money that we don't have. The problem is that basically what you have in government is the worst type of financial situations in terms of capitalism, whereas basically you're using someone else's money to do things that you're not even concerned with or watching too closely. So you don't really care about the outcome. You'll just get more money and throw more crap out, until the right stuff sticks on the wall. So you have an amazingly large amount of waste and spending that's not checked. They don't know if what they think they're spending on is actually working, and then they don't really give a goddamn because it's not their money. It would be wonderful if their pay was tied to their ability to do things. And basically, if they can't pass legislation, they get less money. Or if they're going to go ahead and they're going to increase the budget here and cause more debt, that basically something should be taken away from them so that they can experience that firsthand. So this budget to me is a travesty. Absolutely the opposite of what the Republicans ran on, the opposite of what they wanted, what they said they would do, and it's disgusting. So you see the swamp. It doesn't make a difference if you're Republican or Democrat. The swamp has to be clean. The problem with the government is the government, and it will not ever fix itself. Someone has to fix it, and I'd like to see it end. I'm not sure what that means exactly in terms of it ends, but I got to tell you, and I believe it was Robert Kennedy who said that if you can't go ahead and have a revolution peacefully and politically, then you will have one violently. And I think that's not that far down the pike. As a basic kind of libertarian kind of thought, Republican-ish individualist, I know, and I really truly feel that things must change within our government in order for it to function well. If not, I have no use for it. And I don't really care what happens because I don't think they really care what happens to me. and it should be representation by the people. That's why, whether you like Trump or not, he is the duly elected president. Forget the Russian shit already. Everyone is tired of it. There's no proof of it. It's not going to happen. The idea with this whole investigation with Mueller is to go ahead and get Trump guilty on some type of process crime or something that maybe would be impeachable. If you think that the idea behind this whole investigation is to find out the truth, well, you're an asshole. There's nothing really to discuss much with you because that's just idiotic. That's not what's going on. And I hope there are more memos that come out that actually explain the corruption of this banana republic that was once called the United States and what that's all about. So the budget, terrible. Terrible. How can you claim to be fiscally responsible and increase that debt like that? It's ridiculous. I mean, Trump himself said 24 trillion is like the bewitching number. I don't know. What does he plan on doing? Making us get into so much debt that he can use one of the bankruptcy laws like he did with his business? I don't know. But very, very disappointed in that. And again, as I have this nice libertarian streak, Rand Paul, I think, was absolutely perfect in chastising the Republicans as to what they think they are, what they say they are, and what they actually do. And interesting time we live in. Time will tell. But all of this nonsense and hatred and whatever the media can do to go ahead and try to destroy Trump and try to destroy this presidency, so will all go out at least through the midterm elections. And what I would say to folks out there, midterm elections, if you're a Democrat or a Republican, first of all, I would prefer to have someone like Trump with all of his flaws than certainly like Hillary Clinton, who is just a psychopathic liar. You'd never know how corrupt and what horrific things went on in this government because their plan was to wash it all away. There'd be no Russian anything if Hillary was a president. You wouldn't know about FBI colluding with the DNC to go ahead and elect the people that they want. None of that would happen. We live in an intensely corrupt society, and I don't think that Republicans are necessarily void of any of that also. I think it's all part and piecemeal together. A lot of hatred right now, but certainly in the Obama times, the Republicans and Democrats would yell and scream at each other in front of the cameras and make everything look good, and then they go ahead and have a drink together and bask in their wealth and their glory, which is something they shouldn't have as public servants. And anyway, that's how I feel about it all. And I'm going to stick with that. I do believe it. And I want to thank everyone for listening to the show this evening. I'm going to sign off right now. Again, sorry I didn't get any phone calls from anybody, but maybe we'll try next week, and I'll see if I can push the number and all that before the show. We'll probably go back to something more political next week. I'm not sure what it is. Please check out the website, michaelblumshow.com. I am trying to post a little bit more often. I'm redoing it a little bit. I may go back to blogging on the website again. We kind of condensed our archives. We don't have separate pages anymore for video and audio. And I'll probably wind up getting rid of the audio, to be quite honest. You'll be able to link into it through Mixcloud or SoundCloud. But I'll probably just wind up doing videos on that for a while. Anyway, I do want to thank everyone for joining us this evening. It's been a pleasure for me. I hope it has been for you as well. And remember, I always say this. Let me make sure I am where I am here. Dreamy harp. No. Here we are. Okay. Anyway, folks, I always say this at the end of each broadcast, and that's that everything in the world is possible. It's possible that tomorrow the Democrats and the Republicans will decide to work together for the betterment of the United States. But fewer things are probable. Like that's not too probable. But one thing is absolutely certain, and that's that you're alive. So go out and enjoy life and live it to its fullest, because tomorrow is promised to nobody. Anyway, take care, have a good week, and we'll speak to you next time around.